Hi, everyone. Good morning to all. Welcome to the Online Education Strategies webinar. My name is Bobby Claudio, and I will be your moderator for this session. I'd just like to remind everyone that this session will be recorded, and we are also live on our Facebook page. Now, before we start our fun in learning, let's have a quick check-in. Could you please say hi and shout out what organization you are coming from, using our chat box, and also indicate where you are coming from. So just click on the chat button below your screen, and please make sure to send it to everyone, not just to the panelists. Okay, so let's check out where you're from. All right, so we have people from Valenzuela, people from Baguio, hello, people from Cebu, okay, from Mandaluyong, Marikina. Welcome everyone, people from Las Piñas, from Pasay, San Juan. Okay, we can't read, of course, everybody, but please stay with us, and you will really enjoy and learn a lot today. And thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so we have a good turnout. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of people from different places have come to join us. And let's just look at a few reminders before we continue. Okay, so here are the tools you can use to communicate with us. You'll see both the chat and the Q&A buttons at the bottom of your screen. Please use the chat section if you need to send us any feedback during the webinar. And the Q&A section is where you send in your questions. You can post them anytime throughout the webinar, but in order to manage our limited time, they will be answered at the end. Basic questions will be answered via chat, and the others will be answered live during the Q&A. Kindly include the slide number in your question so we can reply to them faster. And also, as a reminder to everyone, of course, we will be answering questions related to our webinar. Okay. We also use the upvote feature of Zoom. If you have the same question, just click on the like button, and the questions with the most number of likes will be prioritized during the Q&A portion. Our speaker will be joined by subject matter experts who will help respond to your questions. And you may also add more details to the question by using the comment button. A polling question will be posted from time to time. A separate window will pop up to show the poll, and select your answer from the list, and then please click submit. The results of the poll will be shown after. Just click close when you're done viewing the results. At the end of the webinar, you will be automatically routed to a survey form. Kindly take time to answer this short survey because your feedback is very valuable to us and will help improve our succeeding webinars. And those who answered the survey will receive a certificate of attendance for this webinar via email 1 week after this session. So again, everyone, we just want to remind everybody that if you want to get that certificate of attendance, you will need to answer the survey, okay? And you will be able to answer the survey whether you're attending from Facebook or from Zoom. So again, it's very important that you take the survey so you can get your certificate of attendance. Access to the recording of this session, key takeaways, and succeeding webinar schedules will be announced in our Facebook pages at Trend Micro Careers Philippines and Click Right PH. You can also send us a message if you want to request a topic you would want us to cover in our next webinar. So please like and follow our pages. So again, that's at Trend Micro Careers Philippines and Click Right PH. All right, so it's time for us to meet your speaker. Okay, so our speaker is Sir Anthony Elum, or Anthony, has been in the cybersecurity industry for more than 16 years and has continuously maintained his expertise with his status as a certified ethical hacker, forensic investigator, threat professional, and security master from recognized institutions, to mention a few. He has served in the academe for more than a decade and maintains his skill in the education field with his professional certification from Canada and flipped learning certification, keeping up to date with modern methodologies and approach. Currently, as a corporate cybersecurity consultant and trainer at Trend Micro Incorporated, Anthony is tasked to deliver cyber threat training to those who need it and keep abreast with current threats and tactics. Ladies and gentlemen, I now turn you over to my teammate, Anthony. Anthony, I'm going to stop my share and you can go ahead and share your presentation.
Okay, good day. Thank you, Bob, for that introduction. So let me now share my material. All right, so good day to all our guests. For everybody who's watching and listening, the safety and the comfort of our homes right now or wherever you may be, I am Anthony. And as you can see, I am not a recording. So I will be discussing today's webinar topic live, and I will be your speaker for online education strategies. Of course, we'll be focusing on cybersecurity implications of these strategies. Unfortunately, I'll be closing my video as not to distract your attention on the material and of course to minimize the utilization of your bandwidth. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this webinar. All right, so on your screens right now is a statement that I usually provide people who often approach me with questions like, how do I keep safe online? Now that schools are required to go online, how do I protect myself from hackers? Where do I begin with cybersecurity? So, for my friends and colleagues and family members who ask these questions, I actually provide a simple statement. Awareness to what is of true value is where you start to prepare. Today, I hope I could share enough knowledge for me to be able to answer these questions and to also explain what this statement means. So, without further ado, let us begin our session. Now, before anything else, I would request everybody to have at least a pen and paper ready. What is this for? These are for assignments. So, as part of webinar education, I'd like to have applied learning at the end of my webinars. So, every time that there would be a topic that would lead to further questions or would probably lead to further research and investigation, I'd like you to take note of this because at the end of this webinar, I'll be asking you to do research. In addition to that, I don't want you to jump from browser to browser, such as Google, during the presentation. This is to minimize bandwidth use. Audio and video would probably be affected every time you start jumping from one app to the other, as well as this ensures the webinar learning will be applied after the session. Okay, so let's begin our webinar. Let's find out first who are in our webinar today, the guests. Who are they? Bob, could you display a poll? Let's ask who are webinar participants today. Are you students? Students starting online? How about teachers? Are you school administrators who actually handle the back end of the infrastructure or just merely professionals, parents, or probably individuals who are not part of this list? So may I request you guys to select and choose from what category are you on? Okay, so it seems we do have a big bulk of teachers today, Bob.
Yes, we do. So,
We
welcome everyone. Welcome,
welcome,
teachers.
welcome teachers. We've got professionals, so it's a variety. So luckily, this webinar actually will cover everyone in the list, from students to teachers to administrators, as well as with parents. So again, welcome and good day to everybody. Now, let's begin. Online education strategies, specifically today, we will be covering the academic trend of moving from the conventional classroom environment, which is waking up in the morning, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, getting ready for school, hopping on to that public transport or school bus, getting into the campus, right? Meeting up with friends, talking with classmates, meeting up with the teachers, starting a subject, and of course, missing that very favorite subject of mine, which is recess. Okay, this is your standard normal routine. As we start to shift to online classes, teachers starting a subject, and of course, missing that very favorite subject of mine, which is recess.
Anthony, sorry
This
to
is
cut you
your
short. Your
standard
video
normal
cut out.
routine.
Anthony, could you hear me? Your
Yes, I'm
video
online.
cut. Oh, there you go. Could you repeat what you said? Your audio went out.
Oh, my audio went out. Okay, I'm sorry. So to start off again, so as we start to shift to the online or virtual environment, institutions have started to be creative in their approach. I actually visited a couple of university websites, school portals, and I found creative and amazing names to call their online classes. Here we actually have distance learning terminologies, modular learning, asynchronous, synchronous. So exciting, right? Streaming campus, borderless campus. So many new strategies that we're actually seeing. These online strategies will be requiring different methods of approach. I have also discovered the different approach on their websites, such as recording and video lectures using learning management systems. Reading materials are not necessarily printed out. They'll be providing links, and they're calling it the learning assistant or learning partner. Academic and counseling services are now on video conference. Library facilities are now ebooks, and some I've actually read they're called learning packets. And then for co-curricular activities, right? There's augmented reality. Wow, what an education strategy, right? The use of email and, of course, peer support using teams, different teams. One prominent item I saw there was the so-called Microsoft Teams. So many new strategies, so many different methods. Now, in choosing these strategies, I think the universities and schools looked into different factors. Of course, the first factor that will play the biggest role is definitely no physical contact. With the unfortunate onslaught of COVID-19, no physical contact is now a requirement. So that would be the first factor in the decision of the strategies. Second would probably be convenience. The ease of use, probably referencing on the background of the users, making sure that the users have the ability to use the devices, accessibility with the use of technology, availability. This probably is the need to have it now, and of course, maintaining the quality of the education. And with the different strategies I've seen, we see creativity. But what else are we missing in the factors? How about security? So it's probably something that we need to look into as part of the factors. Now, I'm not saying all universities did not consider this. I'm just sharing with you that this should be part of the strategy. When choosing a strategy, the word cybersecurity comes into play. So if cybersecurity is a concern, then probably there is something valuable. And everybody would probably say, what's valuable? Data, information. But do we really know what data and information is? There are different categories of data and information. Some information are called personal information. These are information related to a person itself, like the name, the birthday, the surname. Sensitive information will probably be ethnicity, opinions, and of course, privileged information are those that are covered by laws. The categories were actually grouped based on the Data Privacy Act of 2012 and RA 10173. So if you want to find out how these are categorized, The following Data Privacy Act and RA policies actually have a list. Knowing the different information and data, maybe we could ask a question. Which among these contain more value about you? Your credit card, your debit card on salary day, your phone SIM card, your company identification card. Bob, maybe we could ask our audience. So, credit card, debit card, phone SIM card, or company identification card. Again, the question here is which is important to its value about you. Which among contain value about you? Right. So take note, credit cards or debit card says on salary day. So it's a very specific option there. So let's take a look at the results. Okay, so it seems that a lot of people see value in their debit card on salary day. Now, to answer this question, which among these contain more value is actually all of them. The cards that you see on screen contain small snippets of information about you as a person. So when you're talking about value, all of these cards have something to say about you. All right. So let's get back to online. Let's get back to online education. Okay. Let's go to the life cycle of our new norm when we start online schooling. So here I have an online scenario where we have the teacher or the professor comes in, goes online, right? Checks out the LMS, and then it uploads documents and links as needed for the session's activity. So the professor now opens the LMS recommended by the school, uploads documentation, and then it now sends, or he or she now sends the invites and schedules to the students as needed. So let's just say the professor now says, students have to provide a reaction paper on racism today. Then, as the instructor or professor uploads the necessary files and then creates the links that are in reference to the submission of the paper. So typical teacher-professor routine day prior to the requirement. Here we're seeing the infrastructure in graphical view. I'm seeing the educator opening the desktop machine or laptop machine on Windows 7, accessing the campus website, retrieves the local PDF file, goes onto cloud via internet, references specific links, and then eventually post everything on the cloud LMS services found in the internet. Then let's take a look at the student. Here we're seeing the student's routine. Wakes up in the morning, gets ready to check out his requirements of the day, starts the online session, logs into the LMS, and then accesses the requirement. Sees the requirement, have to create a reaction paper, goes through research, creates the reaction paper, and then eventually submits the paper. So as a student, goes to the LMS, downloads the files necessary, in this case, the Adobe file in PDF format, reads it in Adobe Reader, and then eventually opens Microsoft Word, creates the reaction paper, and saves it as a .doc file. In a graphical representation, we have here the infrastructure, the student opening on the cell phone using Android, accessing Adobe Reader, reading the file, goes onto cloud, takes a look at the links, opens the LMS, and then provides the necessary requirement for the day. So very typical student activity structure. Now let's not leave out the parents. For the parents, here the parent now opens the school's website, probably would like to take a look at the status and the results of her son or his daughter, logs onto the school portal using the credentials provided by the campus, checks results and feedback grades onto the SQL server of the campus. Looking at the procedure, the parent accesses the school's official website and then eventually takes a look at records on the back end. Looking at the online infrastructure in a graphical presentation, parent accesses Chrome on the desktop machine, goes onto the campus website, goes into specific back-end database records, probably will want to see the performance of his or her son or daughter, and then goes into accessing specific files. So here, as parent or probably as teachers and users of the campus, have you by chance recently visited your campus websites? I have actually visited a couple, and I have this question to ask from you. Those who visited their official school website, what does your school official website use as its protocol? HTTP, HTTPS, or did you not bother to check? Again, do not open the browser just to check right now. We are working on bandwidth limitations, so please, if you're not sure, then we have an option for you to select. So what does your school official website use? Did you notice an HTTP protocol, an HTTPS protocol, or you did not sure, you were just told to access it? So based on the results, nobody seems to have noticed firsthand about what kind of protocol the official school website is actually using, right? Don't worry, this is not alarming. This is something that we probably do overlook. Now, looking at the big picture, here I have the entire routine and activities that we discussed earlier. We have the parent, the students, as well as the educator. So what are we seeing? We're seeing multiple access of all the infrastructure in the back end. We're seeing cloud. We're seeing on-site campus. We're seeing multiple servers being used. Questions like, how many locations do you think are the servers located at? For instance, your cloud infrastructure. Where is the LMS located? Your on-site campus. How many servers do you have? Furthermore, if you take a look at the user level, we have multiple access points. What does that mean, multiple access points? Well, let's just say I have 20 students per class. Let's say we have 4 sections for each grade level. And for each grade level, I have to cover K-12 compliance. That's approximately 13 grade levels. So if you estimate, that's around 1,040 students accessing the infrastructure. Now let's include the parents. So if we include the parents in the total, we have around 2,080 potential users accessing the infrastructure. And we have not yet counted the access of teachers as well as administrators. This means we have multiple access points and a massive server usage at a given time. Looking at this infrastructure on the cybersecurity perspective, what do I see? On the cybersecurity perspective, what I see is vulnerabilities. A vulnerability technically is a software bug, a program weakness, or a glitch. Probably some of you have encountered problems with apps not functioning as they should be. This may be identified as bugs, weaknesses, or issues with the application. Vulnerabilities are normal. Now let's get back to the infrastructure that we just took a look at. I have extracted the vulnerability report of 2019, and based on the list, I actually see Android as the top player with vulnerabilities. That means Android as of 2019 had approximately 414 software bugs. Then on the top list, I also see Acrobat Reader. Then way in the middle, I see Windows 7, Windows 2012. Unfortunately, these two operating systems have been ended in terms of support by Microsoft. And in the way down, number 16, I see Chrome. The items you're seeing here are items we have actually seen in the infrastructure. So, on a cyber perspective, they're top ranking as of 2019. Now, knowing that, we're also expecting our students to perform different online activities. So we're going to be asking them to produce reaction papers, which are going to be submitted, probably using Microsoft Word. Some of them may need to provide thesis or essays, again, using editors, Word editors. How about for the lower years? Illustrate, draw, again, to be submitted, probably using an application like Microsoft Paint. And of course, explain, demonstrate, would probably be using video conference as well as recording. These are a couple of activities that we may be asking our students to be doing once we start initiating the online classes. Now, let's get back to the cybersecurity perspective. What we see on a cybersecurity perspective is the simple submission of the reaction paper actually contains more than what is intentionally provided. For me, I'll be seeing political affiliations, personal views, ideology, ethnicity, religion, behavior, as well as character. So as you can see, as students submit documents and requirements, they're unintentionally providing personal sensitive information as well. We call this data information extraction. It's a simple technique of user profiling. Now, I'm correlating this with your online classes, but we've been doing this especially if you have Facebook accounts. Every time you post a comment, every time you like an item, every time you display a component, you're actually providing different kind of information. And if you read it correctly, it's in extraction of that information. Now let's take a look at a lower year perspective. Let's just talk about, the kindergarten students as well as the grade level students. Probably teachers would be requiring them to draw, right? So if we ask a student to draw an important event that happened this week. So now here's an example of a submission. What do you see? Basically, if you look at it carefully, you actually see personal information as well. Do you see how old the birthday celebrant is? Just take a look at the candles on the cake. How many family members are close to this individual? I see mommy, daddy, and probably a sister and a very close uncle. By just looking at the drawing, I can extract information about the child already. Now, like I mentioned earlier, we're not just talking about school. Children have been posting and sending information on Facebook. Let's ask a question, Bob. Do you know what minimum age does Facebook actually require before you can create an account? Because we have children, I've seen profiles of children with their own Facebook accounts. Do you know what age limit does Facebook really require? And we allow our children to just, have their own account, post whatever they want, talk with their friends. Okay. As a result, 18. Wow. So, minimum age limit of what Facebook requires. Now, let's make it clear. Facebook actually has a term and condition in their legal document that says it requires to have at least 13 years old before they can create an account. Terms and conditions will play a very big role in this new online age we have with education. Because the terms and conditions is what the companies or software companies use to protect themselves legally. And here, as you can see, Facebook requires 13 years old and above. They've actually produced a child version for the chat program that they have. So it's a different terms and conditions for that. So nice to know. All right. So now let's proceed further. Let's take a look at the utilization of video conference in our training in this next couple of months. Here, I have a screen capture of a video conference of a school administrator meeting. Now, I intentionally modified the image to protect the identity of those attending the event. Now, just by observing, who among those you see on the screen are probably high-ranking officials of the school? Would you be looking at their attire, the way that they dress, their posture, right? Do you see a teacher? Could you identify the accountant? Would the individual with the cap be a physical ed or workshop educator? So what I'm showing you here is that using information extraction, we can have potential information taken just by looking at a video. Let's take a look at a younger group. Here, we actually have children going through their routine as they are required to go online to greet their teacher, right, as part of their procedure. Again, the image was edited to protect the identity of the individuals. Let's say this is a class video. What or who among them caught your attention? Is it the kid who went online in the middle of his preparation before he could get into the class? So as you can see, he's not yet ready. He seems to be finishing off with drying up himself. Or how about, did the cute little girl in the car caught your eye? Maybe she's there because that's the place where she has strong Wi-Fi connection. That could be the reason, right? Or did any of you notice the recording icon on the upper left portion of the screen? Isn't that something that you need to be alerted on? As children in a video conference with the recording indicator light on, this might be attracting a different kind of threat actors. So as parents, we actually have to be aware of how these new apps, specifically video, is being used. A simple recording feature is actually a violation of some policies, specifically privacy, if the individual involved is a minor. Now, these apps that we're seeing get into our devices because of one simple requirement. They will ask your permission to do so. I believe everyone here has a phone or a desktop or a gadget that required you to use the camera, that required you to access the photographs. And as simple as what it's asking you to do, allow access means allow access. Agree means agree. What did we just agree on? Basically, to read, to write, and probably to have full access as indicated by their terms and conditions. So this is what we should be looking at every time we install or deploy applications for our use. Now, why are we going through all this? Why do we need to be aware of all this? The reason is simple. We are experiencing attacks now. As we discussed earlier, vulnerabilities are already present. And these vulnerabilities, if they are used by a hacker, they are now called exploits. So here's an example. Just last month, June 25, news came out of a 21-year-old hacker that was nabbed for breaking into accounts of 100,000 students. So I don't know if you got this on the news, but this is a data breach. And as I'm sharing it with you now, the attacks are happening now. Furthermore, exploits, social engineering. Just this month, there are attacks on a different level wherein love scams are being used, social engineering tactics, school teachers being pushed into investment scams, identity theft. So these exploits are actually being used because we have vulnerabilities in the infrastructure. And of course, we have the deployment of malware. Now, where would this probably come from? Well, as mentioned in the procedures earlier, we will be passing files back and forth, Word documents, PDF documents, right? So on and so forth. It is possible that we might be acquiring malicious software or malware. On the screen you're seeing right now is a Trojan component. This is the screen what the hacker has when they actually try to infiltrate your machine. On the right side, you will see there an option called webcam. This specific Trojan actually has the ability to activate your webcam without your consent. And for those who are actually managing back-end systems on campus, like those managing the SQL servers, the database of the students, right? We have ransomware. So just to get a refresher, ransomware is wherein your files will be encrypted and a requirement of payment has to be done for the restoration of the files. So what will be targeted? Definitely your records. Imagine an attack on examination day. So what happens when by accident or by intent, the database in the back end is hit by ransomware on the scheduled examination day? So no one could access the database. Let's take a look at the entire infrastructure again. This time, let's focus on questions that we should be asking to secure our environment. We will be giving out data. Where? To the cloud, to the on-site campus. Probably some of you already have started to register your information, right? Asking for cell phone numbers, asking for email addresses, asking for full names. We should ask questions like, on the cloud, who can access these servers? Where are these servers located? When we access LMS infrastructure, online learning systems, do you know where these servers are? How about on campus? Are these servers secured? Or can anyone can just access them? And if so, are there backup plans in place? Backup is one method to prevent the full impact of ransomware. Now, other than asking these questions, can you as an individual do something to at least prevent or minimize the impact of the attack? We mentioned vulnerabilities earlier, and vulnerabilities lead to exploits. The solution to minimize exploits is actually just to apply updates and patches of all your operating systems as well as your applications. Here's an example of one app that we use for video conferencing, Zoom. Based on my research, I have discovered that Zoom, since April 2020, has deployed the patches that you see on screen right now. As of count, there are 14 updates in the last 3 months. What does that mean? That's approximately one patch a week. So imagine if this application releases a patch weekly, how about the others? Have you checked your Chrome? Have you checked your Adobe Reader? Did you know that Microsoft Solitaire just released an update this morning? So this simple routine should be part of our habit. It's just like coming into the office or coming into campus, right? As a teacher, you come in and before you leave, what do? You fix your table, you lock your drawer, and then you tidy up the area. As we use your devices and gadgets, it is a best practice to do the same procedure. As you finish browsing the net, clear the browser history. Run a local scan. So these simple routines before you close your machine, close the desktop, leave an application, we have to use that procedure just to minimize potential threats. So, do you know if your Chrome is updated? Do you know if your Office is updated? So remember, I gave you a requirement to bring a pen and paper. I will not be explaining those steps here because we only have an hour, but these are assignments for you to check on. Now, let's bring it back to the scenario that I have done. I visited a lot of websites, specifically schools and campuses, and I created a summary of the recommendations that we're asking our students to acquire in preparation for online learning. So here's a couple of items that I did find, and this is actually posted as what the student needs to have before they start online classes. So just by reading it, we can already take a look at some items of concern, like for instance, Windows 7 as your operating system. Now, as I visited different stores today, or a couple of weeks now, I've noticed massive purchases of computers in shops. And one of their selling operating systems is Windows 7. Maybe that's why it's coming out cheap, because it has an old operating system. I'm also seeing the use of camera as part of the requirement. Again, one thing we need to require in terms of updates is what we call a firmware upgrade. So even the hardware has to have an update that would be best. And as well as Google Chrome browser being updated as well. Okay. We have Android 9. Is Android 9 a smartphone latest version? Right? Google Docs. We require our students to use Google Docs. Did you read the terms and conditions of Google Docs before you did accept their service? And finally, for connectivity, right? We're requiring them to have 1.5 Mbps or faster. Well, technically, in the time speed computation here in the Philippines is quite different. When you say 1.5 Mbps, are we expecting the student to be on camera? Because at that speed, we might have a problem trying to see the student right on camera. Plus at 1.5 Mbps speed, how is the upload download speed? So probably we have to consider the transition between file transfers between student and service, or file server and student back and forth, right? So just by taking a look at the recommendation you are requiring your students, you can have a discussion with the administration. Now, I'm not saying change it. I'm just saying prepare to educate your students on these components. Prepare to assist them on what to do if they do receive these minimum system requirements. This is my call with you, right? So that is our discussion. Now let's take a look at the takeaways. As I end today, these are the reminders I would like you to take home. One, every time now we submit, we forward, we send information, determine what data you want to post. Okay? Some of the forms that I've seen have an asterisk, required information. Well, if it's not required and you don't feel comfortable sending it, you don't have to. Second, where are you posting the document or the data? So just like submitting anything online, do you know where the servers are? Every time you post something on Facebook, do you know where that picture is going? Next, read the terms and conditions of services before you accept or agree. I know it's really hard to read a 25-page document with font 11, but if you are someone who is concerned of getting that data out, it's very important to see what you're getting yourself into. Remember, these are legal protection strategies by these companies. So read them. Enable security features of your apps. So all apps have their own security features. Your browsers have their own features. Your messengers have their own features. Try to read up on those and enable them if necessary. Update your operating system, all your apps on your phone, including firmware. I mentioned firmware a while ago. These are related to the hardware. Do you know that your smart TV requires updates from time and time again? That's considered firmware. So do not forget to update the OS. Awareness of security through education should also be part of what we're sharing with our students. It's not just because we require them to do so, but we should also inform them, okay, we're using Windows 7, but we need to do the following security strategies. And finally, security should be a factor in deciding your strategies and recommendations because we are now at a massive entry point, meaning a lot of people now are accessing your services, are now accessing your servers. Unlike before, it's just the faculty. Now we're going to be requiring almost everybody if we're starting with online education. All right. To top off, I would just like to recognize the references I use, that all icons and pictures are of their own ownership and copyrights and trademarks are recognized in this scenario. So Bob, I have ended my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Anthony, for a very educational and informative webinar. Let me just now share my screen. Okay, because we now proceed to our Q&A portion. And based on the chat window and the Q&A, a lot of people have been very active in asking questions and also their comments. So it's a very, very successful and informative webinar. Okay, so we will now start with the first question. And again, everyone, we will try our best to answer as much as we can with the time permitted. So the first question is from Jerome Pennant. In your opinion, what is the most effective learning modality in the midst of the pandemic season?
Okay, the most effective modality. I don't think there is the most effective or there's a 100% secured effective scenario here. It's more of being able to understand the option that you're getting into and then understanding what security measures we can put in that area, right? Because we cannot isolate security just using one method, and we cannot decide just by using one method. It's a variety of entry points, it's a variety of methods. And for each strategy that you decide to use, we have to step back, take a look at the perspective of an attack, and then we work ourselves from there. Just like my first statement, what do you plan to secure? You start from there. Now, once you know what you plan to secure, then you work your way into creating these strategies. That would be my recommendation. But what's the best? There's no best and there's no 100% guarantee. That's the issue with security. So I hope I was able to help out with that.
Thank you, Anthony. Second question is from Maper Manalili. What is the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? How does it affect the cybersecurity of the information that users or slash visitors of the website provide?
All right. HTTP, HTTPS. Though it's an assignment, it's an assignment. But again, let me share with you something about it just to make it easier to understand. There is an encryption method being used over the infrastructure. Encryption is the ability to cover the actual data being transferred back and forth. It's like changing the characters. Now, HTTP does not have any encryption strategy in place. So that means I can literally read off the websites you're going to. Now, if you have a website that's got HTTPS, the S is basically for secure, then you have at least minimum security in place. As data gets transferred back and forth on an HTTPS infrastructure, there is at least security encryption happening. It makes it difficult for an attacker to get in. That's what we need to do. Make it difficult. Now, of course, if the website does not have the security or HTTPS function, then it's so easy to come in, take a look at the packet, read it off, and get into your website. Okay? So I hope I was able to give you a short explanation of the difference between HTTP and HTTPS.
Thank you, Anthony. Another question is what is or which browser is most secure and most recommended?
Okay, so again, it's again a browser question here. There are a lot of browsers right now, right? A good example is, do you know what Edge looks like today? It's not the letter E. It's this swirly thingy, right? They've got this new icon. Now let's go to the best browser today. Just like any app, there is no best browser. Each browser will be boasting their own feature, their own function, right? They'd say they have better security, they have better this, better that. But again, in selecting the browser would also be dependent on the website you're visiting. There are some websites that are very selective of what browser they can open in. Now, in answering the best browser would be probably asking what would be the best security application. There is none. What you need is to understand the browser, whatever browser it is, enable the security features of that browser, and just like I mentioned earlier, make it a habit to flush, clear, and delete your history. That would be the most important one. Now, another thing I may want to share is that I want you to choose a browser that has a company to back it up. What do I mean by that? Well, all applications have legal terms and conditions. There are some browsers that are what we call open source. Now, if I compare open source with a company backed up browser, open source means a lot of people are trying to use it to study it. The company backed up browsers, you have there a team or more than one department facilitating the use of that browser, making it secure, coming up with improvements, so on and so forth. So again, no best browser, more of understanding the features and eventually coming up with the best practice and habits. I hope I was able to help with that.
Thank you, Anthony. We still have 5 minutes, so we can still entertain questions. Next question is from Nisa Maghuyop. What apps or websites do you recommend for elementary students?
Okay, apps and websites. Okay, first things first, they'd have to be definitely secure. Second, I would rather have the instructor teacher um, visit the site, right? Because you have to pay attention to potential graphic displays. You have to consider the hidden meaning that these websites are actually visiting. There are no um, legit, or I mean, no specific sites that I could best recommend, but it would be on the perspective of the educator. I would highly recommend you visit it first, take a look, do a run on it, see if there are links that are potentially threatening to the students, right? And of course, get the parents involved. I think one thing that we forget is that in education, parents should be part of deciding on what their kids should see. So if you want, you can actually do what we call parent teacher checks if the sites are legit, as well as if they're acceptable to the parents as well. Again, no specific site that I can recommend. It's more of being able for you to interact with the parent, agreeing with what sites are best for their children. I hope I helped with that one, Bob.
Thank you, Anthony. It really is a very successful webinar, Anthony, because there are a lot of questions, and now we have to entertain questions from Facebook Live. The first question is from Mary Grace. How are we capturing data? Do we have the right level of consent?
Okay, that's kind of broad. Could you repeat that again, Bob?
She said, how are we capturing data? Do we have the right level of consent?
All right, that's a very, very broad question. Okay, how are they capturing data? Well, basically, um, the statement, or the phrase, anything you put online or you digitize is now in cyberspace. That's one thing that we have to consider, right? Anything that you post is now in cyberspace. Where that is, we don't know, but definitely there is a server somewhere out there in the hard drive, the data you just submitted. So that's what's actually happening. So you have to consider what information you've already provided, and you have to take a look at what are the conditions with the application or service you're using, and what legalities are they trying to share with you about how they're going to handle that information. Unfortunately, the terms and conditions are really wrong. If you want, you can try it out first with Facebook. They have these really, really wrong terms and conditions, but you get an idea on how and where and what data and information they use, and how they would use it for, right? So I hope I was able to answer something for that.
Thank you, Anthony. We have 2 minutes on the clock. We can address one more question from FB Live. From Me'an Marfa, is it safe to save your password in your browser in your device?
All right. I get that question very often, and just to scare you, right? Those are using Facebook Messenger. You notice every time that you turn off your phone, you turn it back on. Do you need to log into Facebook Messenger again? You don't. The reason is because on that app on your phone, it's already saved. So, how did that happen? Simple. When you actually agreed to remember my password or keep me signed in, you actually agreed that the password was automatically saved on your gadget, right? So be very careful. There's a reason why these terms and conditions are hyperlinked near the agree button. Okay? Now, is it advisable to save them on your phone? Definitely no. If you take a look at what's happening today, you actually will be seeing reports that hackers, attackers, and thieves are actually now going to try to steal your phone. There are actually moves now that we have. There's an attack called SIM cloning or SIM scam. If you research on that, you will actually notice attackers moving to the phone because of the dual authentication strategies that we have put in place. So now your phones become more of the key to all of your accounts. So if you're asking me, save passwords on these gadgets, definitely no. Clear out the browsers if you have time. Definitely do not allow written or do not save items about accounts or passwords on your phone. So that would be my suggestion for this specific question. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Anthony. Actually, it's already 11:01, but there is a question that was asked both in FB Live and here in our Q&A, which is very important. So the question is, what is the best antivirus application or software that we can use to protect us from malware?
All right. The antivirus protection strategy. Okay. There are a lot of AV and malware, anti-malware tools and software out there right now. One thing you have to consider is number one, the legitimacy of the application. Free doesn't mean it's the best, definitely, right? And if you talk about security, security comes in a multiple approach scenario. You don't just install an antivirus so that you can be protected against hacker. In security today, we have what we call multi-layered protection. So you have your antivirus on your desktop. You need to have another facility or service that's monitoring your network. And of course, do not forget the weakest link, which is the user. Even though you have all of these antivirus strategies in place, if the user is not educated on the threat, it is still possible that they will have been infiltrated. So it has to be a consortium of efforts between different AV positioned in different locations, and of course, the user being educated enough to be aware of these threats as well. So that's how I would recommend in selecting or choosing the right AV.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Again, for a very informative and very educational webinar. So that's it, folks, for our time. I'd like to remind everyone that our next webinar topic would be dealing with screen time challenges, which will be on July 30th, 2020, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. For those on mobile devices, please take a snapshot of this QR code as you can see on the screen to go to the survey. And I would like to remind everyone, please, if you want to get your certificate of attendance, you need to answer the survey. Please visit our Facebook pages, Trend Micro Careers Philippines, and click Right PH for additional announcements. And of course, the key takeaways for this session and access to the recording will be posted there. And please like and follow these pages and stay updated. On behalf of Trend Micro, my name is Bob Claudio with my teammate Anthony Elum. Thank you so much for your wonderful comments. Thank you for joining us and have a great day, everyone. And again, please remember to answer the survey. Thank you so much, everybody.